One. And a good day to you, Explore Nation. John Lynskey here with season 4, episode 20, the big 2-0. Never hit this number before. Looking Back with Lynskey. And it's a real privilege and an honor to be joined today by one of the most iconic teachers in the history of Columbus. 35 years as an explorer educator, Hall of Famer, department head leader, alumni mom, alumni aunt, alumni sister. I don't know how that works, but the whole point is when you talk about the great teachers at Columbus, her name always comes up. So it's a real pleasure to welcome my dear friend, Miss Alina Sanchez. Alina, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your kind words always.
Well, it's easy when they're true, Alina. So,
Thank you.
uh, I was thinking before we got started, what's that saying? The days are long, but the years are short. 35 years, that's just crazy. But here we are. And so let's go back to where it all began, because we all arrive at Columbus on our own path in our own way, and your journey is different. It's probably something you did not anticipate,
No.
but I think it worked out okay. So let's go back. You're a PACE graduate, class of 1975.
75, yeah.
Yes, valedictorian. And then after those great achievements, you went on to Barry University and you had a double major. And take us from there into your initial career, and then we'll segue our way to Columbus High School.
Okay. So I graduated from Barry in 79. I had a degree in biology and one in medical technology, and graduated, and the week later got married to Rudy, and he had graduated the year before and had gotten a job at Pratt and Whitney in West Palm Beach, so he was already living over there. So I got married, moved to West Palm Beach, and I was working at St. Mary's Hospital in West Palm in the microbiology lab for a year and a half or so. I really didn't want to live in West Palm. I loved Miami and I missed Miami. So Rudy was able to get a job with FP&L, and we moved back to Miami. And I got a job here for a company. I don't know if they still exist, but back then they were called American Dade, and they made reagents to that were used for blood typing in the hospital. Like if you were going to have a transfusion, they need to match your blood. Okay. And this company made the reagents for testing that. And I got a job there. I was working in the research department. And at the time, this was early 80s, monoclonal antibodies it was cutting edge. It was a new technology. Now, monoclonal antibodies, everybody talks about them, especially with COVID and everything. But so my job was we were trying to make cells called hybridomas. We were fusing mouse cancer cells with mouse liver cells, mice that have been immunized to produce the particular antibody that the company was trying to market to sell, and they wanted to make it monoclonal. So I was trained in this technology, and we had to grow our own mice and just everything. It was a really neat job. We had to get the spleens out and just totally research, very hands-on. So anyways, great job, very nice. But I got pregnant with my daughter Eileen. I had Eileen, and I was supposed to go back to work for 3 months later. And I couldn't really find a babysitter that I was comfortable with. As the time got closer, I finally just called my boss and I said, look, I'm not coming back. I have to take care of my little baby. And he said, well, you could have more time off. And I said, no, 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 I'm not coming back. This is it. I'm done. So that didn't go over well because, you know, I was trained in this technology. But anyways, that's what happened. So I stayed home for 5 years. And in the meantime, I had Alan.
Mm-hmm.
And by the fifth year, you know, we had saved money before we had the kids, but by 5 years being home, one salary, it was just, we had spent all our money. And I wanted to put the kids eventually in Catholic school. And Rudy's like, well, look, if you want to put them in Catholic school, you're going to have to go back to work. So I figured, okay, I'll work in like a little daycare, put him there, and you know, I'll be with them anyways. So I told my sister, Delilah, Peta, and she's like, are you kidding? You can't do that. That's too boring for you. You need to go to Columbus. And I said, oh, no, no, I can't do that. I'm used to being in a lab, you know, focused, nobody distracting me. You know, all these boys. And she's like, no, 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 you have to go to Columbus. So I thought about it. And then it turns out that Georgina Diaz was going to be absent for a few days and they needed a sub. So my sister goes, okay, look, you need to come and sub. This way you'll know if it's something that you can do, because I have never taught. I wasn't a teacher.
Yeah.
So so I said, all right, fine, I'll do it. So I went. It wasn't that bad, you know, it was okay. So I said, all right, I'll apply, but they didn't have an opening in the beginning of the year. And I was still, you know, still looking. I needed to work. And around September, they had hired a physics teacher, and she didn't work out, and she quit. And they called me, and I said, okay, but now I can only work part-time because of my kids. They're in the preschool and they get out at noon, and I have to pick them up. I don't have anybody to take care of them. Well, they figured it out. They moved schedules around, and I ended up teaching Algebra 1, and at the time, biology phase 3, which is accelerated biology now. And I did that. I was actually there working part-time a couple of years. And as soon as Alan got into kindergarten, then I was in a regular full-time. And so that's how I got there.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
It's history.
But there's a lot of history. Speaking of history, Delilah and I started the same year together.
Okay.
You know, in '84, and you know, when this whole thing was developing with you, she was telling me, well, you know, my sister's going to work here and everything, and she just said, my sister's different than I am. And, and then I got to meet you, and I said, yeah, she's different, all right. But so you get your foot in the door, right? But there, back then, as you know, we were a completely different school. Maybe not necessarily better or worse, but really different. There weren't as many women teachers. There was no beginning teachers program like Lavala we have now. It was
Yeah.
throw you in the deep end of the pool, survival of the fittest. And, you know, you were in your early 30s, an attractive woman in an all male environment, never having taught. That sounds very challenging. And it wasn't it?
It was hard. I had never taught, so I wasn't used to being in that classroom. I used to, during my free period, I used to sit in Mrs. Call's class and my sister's class, and to see, you know, like, how do they handle the kids situations. I go, why can't they just behave and want to learn? That's what I did in school. Why couldn't they do it? You know? And
Okay.
so it was like, I was so frustrated, you know. So by Christmas time, during Christmas vacation, I told Rudy, I said, I'm gonna quit. I can't do this. And he goes, well, listen, we have two little kids. We need the money. You better make it work. And so I did.
Um, how much did it help you, the fact that you had gone to Pace and there were several very, very important Marist brothers at Pace then that ended up at Columbus, including Brother Herb, including Brother Felix, including Brother Steve. I mean, that had to help a little bit, right?
Oh, for sure. It was actually, it was kind of neat because it was almost like being back in high school,
Yeah.
because brother Bernie has been passed away a long time ago, so a lot of people maybe don't remember him. But anyways, he was at Columbus for many years too,
Yeah.
but he was my physics teacher at Pace. Brother Felix was my math teacher. Brother Herb, history. Brother Steve, also history, government, at the time,
One of those
whatever
history
was
things.
being taught.
Yeah.
Um, so it was great. And I felt really good that, I was around people that I knew for a long time. So that was definitely a big plus, to help me. And everybody was, trying to be supportive, and because, like you said before, there were very few female teachers, and it was hard. It was hard, getting used to being in that environment.
Yeah. And, the boys are the boys. And that the rules have changed, yes, but boys are boys, and like any kid, they'll get away with what you allow them to get away with. And one thing I noticed about you, yes, you're quiet, very professional, uh, attractive, but you dressed appropriately at all times. You dressed to not draw attention to yourself. But you were always prepared. And I think being prepared, although you may not know exactly the techniques of teaching and all that, the fact that you were prepared, the boys appreciate that and they recognize that even as you're finding your way.
Yes, no, for sure. They see right through you. If you don't know your stuff, your material, they know, and then they'll start asking you questions, that they know you're not going to know. So I was always very prepared, and then eventually I started teaching the honor kids, and then you really have to be on your toes because they're
Yeah.
smart and they know right, they'll see right through you if you don't know your material.
And with the really smart kids, I think you'd agree, they don't want their time wasted.
No.
The not yet smart, they may not care all that much, but the really bright kids, they want to get literally their money's worth. And yeah.
No, for sure. And they appreciate it.
Yeah.
I get comments all the time, Miss, your class, I learned so much. It was hard, but it was worth it. But you review enough and you explain it, so we get it. And so I think that was always part of my lesson, just review, starting, with reviewing what I covered the day before, new information, then a quick wrap up of what we did that day. And that, going over and over, helped them, and you know they really appreciated that.
You know, um, you had an ability. Now science is science, biology is biology. Okay. I've always said if you can't teach history, there's something wrong with you because it's just intrinsically an exciting subject. Biology is, it's biology. It's got some cool stuff. I'd go with the word cool more than perhaps exciting, but you had a way to convey it and you still do, to convey it to the boys that they saw, oh, this is okay, and I think the word I would use is you had enthusiasm for what you were doing.
Yes. And I would tell them little stories. I would make up stories about photosynthesis or cellular respiration, and just kind of like break up the monotony, of something difficult. These are difficult topics for them to understand. And I've, alumni of, have come back years later, and they say, oh, I still remember your photosynthesis story or your cell respiration story. And I would just make up stuff, and like use it like real everyday something, and relate it to whatever we were covering. um, and they really appreciated that, and hands-on, a lot of
Yes.
demonstrations, a
Yes.
lot of labs, that always helped, and got them interested. Every day there was something on my desk. Oh, miss, what's that? Are we doing lab today? So it was a lot, usually a demo, or eventually, labs. We couldn't do a lab every day, but depending what I was talking about, I would have something on my desk to show them. And that got him interested.
And the fact that you could trust them to a certain extent with sharp instruments in their hands, that's
Oh,
not easy.
oh, that there's stories about those days.
Yeah, there are.
Oh,
Speaking of those days, how long do you think it took you to where you finally could say, I know what I'm doing, I've got this down?
I probably, after about 3 or 4 years, I felt pretty confident and comfortable with the kids. And I knew always, I realized that I had to be very professional, and just no downtime in class, and just from bell to bell. um you know and it was, and then I got used to it, and it was fine. And now I couldn't imagine having done anything else but what
Hmm.
I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, that's the litmus test right there. When did you start to see yourself? And I know you don't like to talk about yourself in this way, but when did you start to realize that you were becoming a role model? And it's easy to say for young female teachers, but I think for all teachers, but particularly for female teachers. When did you start to realize that, go watch Alina, that she knows what she's doing, she knows how to handle herself? You know, I know you were never perhaps comfortable with that, but that's what ended up happening.
Yes. Yeah, you know I it just kind of started happening. The administration would ask a new teacher, just come talk to me, come sit in my class and observe my class. And then I would also, help them out. So it was kind of like um, a mini Lavala
Yeah,
program, but
yeah.
just personal, and just giving them hints. Hey, when this happens, you need to be ready to do this, or how do you handle different situations in the classroom. And it was different times, a lot of now there's is a different crowd of kids, and um, it's different. They have iPads, they have stuff to keep them busy. Back then,
Hmm.
um, it was a
Chalk in the
chalkboard.
blackboard. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wrote lots of notes on the board. Um and it was, I'm sure you remember, but they would tie the shoes to the desk, because it was, lace shoes, and
Oh, yeah.
turn, you
And the
know
zip ties to the back of the desk. Yes.
they
You
would
know,
turn the bags inside out, and I mean,
oh, good clean fun.
spitballs on the ceiling, and
Yeah.
it was just different times.
It was. But I think, all right, so you came from Pace, you're a woman, all those things, but when did you begin to really fully understand that there is literally a Columbus culture? and the closeness between teachers and students and alumni, and it's different. I mean, there really is a Columbus culture.
Absolutely. I guess after my son graduated in '03, I realized how close the students had been, have stayed together. They're still
Yeah.
best friends, for they went to different colleges, universities, and it doesn't matter. They're still friends. My son tells me all the time, "Oh, mom, you know who texted me today? You know who I talked to? So and so." So it it's amazing how they stay together, and I don't see that in other schools, that the students are still so close together. The networking
Mm,
of Columbus students is amazing. Um, you mentioned Columbus, and doors open up for you. It's just the way it is. I, you know, I have so many stories of cases where, the Columbus guys come through and they help other Columbus guys, other alumni, even if they are not from their graduating class or anything. It doesn't matter.
no.
You're an explorer.
Yeah.
You got to be good.
Only in Miami do they look at where you graduated high school more than where you graduated college. Because if Columbus comes up, like you just said, 78, 98, it doesn't matter. We're all in this together. Let's talk about Alan for a moment, okay? Delilah worked there. She's your sister, but now your son's coming into school, okay? And how did that feel? I mean, it's different. He's your son. You're a teacher. I mean, obviously, he's one of the brightest kids ever to go to Columbus. Like you, he's valedictorian. I He was not a history guy per se, but he always did excellent in class, always. But what was it like for you to have your son in school?
Oh, it was a great experience. The weird thing about it was that he didn't want kids to know that I was his mom.
Yeah.
So so I had him in class because I taught honors bio, so that he took honors bio, and I treated him in class like any other student. This you wouldn't know. It was one. I remember this one time we were in lab a month or so later after school had already started, and one of the students comes up to me and says, "Miss, the kids are saying that Alan is your son. Is that true?" And I go, "Yes, he's my son." And they go, "Oh, come on, tell us the truth." And I go, "It is. He's my son." They still didn't believe me because I was, like whatever however I treated any student, he was treated the same way. And in the hallway, he would pass me. He'd walk right by me. He didn't even say hello. The only time he'd come to my class is if he needed money for lunch.
Of
Otherwise,
course. Of
he
course.
did
He'd
not
say
want
hi to all.
anything to do with me. I'll tell you one more thing. I would drive him up in the morning, and as we were pulling into school, he was slouched down in the seat so they couldn't see that he was driving with me in the car,
That's hilarious. He'd say hi to all his other teachers and not his mother.
and not me.
Now, uh, tremendously exciting. His academic achievements to be valedictorian is quite an honor, but he was also an integral part of the first state championship team we had, a major sport, the baseball team. And I mean, they got on a roll. They had great players, all through his career, but particularly his senior year, they had great chemistry, great coaching. Uh, his role in the playoffs was crucial. Everything about that team was special, including, and this is probably will never happen again. He's valedictorian. It's graduation day. The state championship game is the same day, and that's one of those things we'll never forget. Explain what that was, because I remember seeing you that day, and you were uptight.
Yeah.
Talk about the graduation, the logistics, the game, Tampa, all of that.
Yeah. So they had to play a game Friday in Tampa. So we all went over there, and Friday they played. They won. And he didn't want to come to graduation because he wanted to stay with his teammates in Tampa. And I told him, listen, Alan, this in the school's history, the valedictorian has always given his speech. You need to be there. We will get a plane ticket. You will fly right out of graduation, and you'll be able to practice and have your be with your teammates Saturday, and you'll be able to play. So he was not too crazy about the idea, but I said, well, that's what we're going to do. So we had already bought a plane ticket just in case they won. And I go, okay, if they don't win Friday, no big deal, but we already had everything set up. And so they win Friday. We drove back to Miami. Graduation was in the morning.
Yeah.
From there, we drove him to the airport, dropped him off, and then we actually drove because we had time to drive, but he needed to be there to practice with the
Yeah.
team, etc., and be back into the role of baseball again. So, but that was exciting times. I felt like it was in the movies, stuff you see in the movies.
Well, it does have the makings of a Hollywood script. There's no doubt about that. He gave a great speech and turned around and played a great game and brought it home. And that was a turning point in Columbus athletics. And you talk about the friendships. Alan has gone on to have, he's now a doctor. And John Jay, one of his closest friends, had a tremendous major league career, now coaching for the Marlins. And I know John was at your house all the time, and Alan and John are still friends. And it doesn't matter. And this is the best part of our culture. No one cares what you do. No
Right.
one cares that you played in the major league. No one cares that you're a doctor, whatever. And same with my friends. You revert back to being 17,
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They were all friends. They really were. And they've stayed friends, which to me is amazing.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things about going to Columbus. And then the family connections. Both your nephews, Delilah's son, George and Stephen, they go to Columbus, and maybe, just maybe, I don't know if you'll still be teaching. I would hope not. But to have your grandsons go to Columbus, that would be I'm sure they'll go. It just, will you be there is the question.
Well, they will be explorers. I can tell you that. They know when they are born. I told my daughter and I told Alan. I said these guys are explorers. That's it. That's my only rule here. Now, my grandson, my 7-year-old Gatli, he poor thing. He thinks that I'll be his teacher at Columbus, but he's only in first grade.
Yeah, do the math on that.
So
I don't know.
I don't think so, but I don't have the heart to tell him
Nah,
that.
there's no need. There's no need. You took on a lot of different roles. And again, you were not one to seek out attention or whatever, but you were department leader in science for, I don't know, 20 whatever years it was. I mean, and you were the most consistent, reliable department leader the school's probably ever seen. And you took your responsibility doing that the same as you did in teaching. What was it like shifting into that department leader's role?
That was interesting because I had never been like in charge of people, or like I would just it was only like friends. um and then I had more duties and it took more time, so I didn't have a lot of time to hang out with the other fellow teachers, which before lunchtime we would sit, Savidra and Dugard, and we would all hang out, and
Yeah.
for a lunchtime and have fun. But now I had a lot of other activities and things that I needed to get done, so I had less time. I was always a little more stressed because I did department leader, but I had other things that I had to do too. I had the science club that eventually became Science National Honor Society,
Mhm.
and then Block C came along, and as you know, you and I did a lot of work with Block C. So it was like a more stressful time because I had more duties and I wasn't used to, kind of knowing that I was in charge of, the science department, and it was a little hard getting used to it, but honestly, the science department has always been very cooperative, and they made it easy for me, honestly. They always cooperated, and whatever I asked them to do, they did, and it just made my job easier, honestly.
Yeah, it's great to have good people, no doubt. No doubt. You were talking about a few moments ago, chalk on a blackboard and everything else. We saw the evolution from that and overheads and everything else into, first VCRs and then TVs in the classroom and then smart boards and iPads and no more books and all that.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. Talk about the adjustment we all made on the fly to teaching during COVID and what it's been like with the post-COVID kids.
Yeah. Obviously, all that technology, I'm not very techy, so that
Yeah,
that took getting used to. Um, but we figured it out. Everybody helped, and I was able to do that. And I did. It didn't feel like teaching, honestly.
yeah,
And the kids were not really engaged, focused. You didn't have hands on. You couldn't do labs, which was a lot of the fun of teaching and having them in class. So that was like a disappointing time. And the first year we came back normal, it was hard getting those kids back to doing homework and just knowing that you expected a certain level of work and work ethic, and it was hard getting them used to that. They had been used to being home, and you were on a Zoom, and Miss, I gotta go, somebody's knocking at the door, or Miss, my mom is calling me, and all this very laxed environment, and now you're in the classroom, and you have to pay attention, and you have work that you need to do, and study, and that year was hard, transitioning, getting them used to the real world.
so Lena, a couple years post-COVID, where have you seen those kids that missed those couple years in their social development? Have you noticed a difference?
um not really. I mean, the kids that I have now, in general, are pretty normal, back to working hard, and they know that I expect them to. It's an honors class, and the Miss, can you have extra credit, can you help me? I go, no, it's an honors class. If you can't hack it, you got to go to a different level, but there's no extra credit.
Okay. Well,
So you got to keep the bar up there, and they'll rise up there.
yes, they find a way. We've talked a lot about family, and Columbus has so many family relationships. Your husband Rudy had a tremendous career at FP&L, and I remember when he retired, the notion came up, well, maybe Rudy should come teach at Columbus, and he brings all this to the table, and that happened. And so what was that? You had your son, and now Rudy's there too. And you know, we tease people about, you know, having their spouse there. You know, for like Maria Foyo, we always said that every day was take your husband to work day for her with Fred, you know. So what was it like having Rudy at school there?
Oh my God, it was great. What happened was Dr. Maderos, who was teaching AP Physics, was retiring,
Yeah.
and I was department leader. And one day I'm sitting with him, and I was like, I gotta find a physics teacher that can teach AP. This is so hard, Miss Dr. Maderos is retiring, and at that time, Rudy was thinking of retiring from FPNL, and but he didn't want to retire unless he found something to do. He just didn't want to retire and be home. And he had always loved teaching physics. That was he always dreamed about teaching high school physics. And I said, would you like to teach the AP Physics? You've always wanted to do this. Why don't you just retire and do this? He thought about it and he goes, yeah, I think that would be great. So I said, all right, well, I got to sell this to Mr. Pugh. So I went to Dave and I talked to him about it, and he goes, oh, but he's never taught. And I go, trust me, he's going to be great. I know he's my husband, but I can tell you he will be amazing. And then he said, yes, okay, well, we'll do it. So he started teaching there, and he he was amazing with the kids. The kids loved his class. And he started the AP Physics C, which is AP Physics with calculus, which is a very prestigious course to have in high school. Very few high schools teach it. And I was so happy to hear that next year they're actually going to have 2 periods of AP Physics C, which is amazing. And he started that class, and it was because he was such a good teacher, because he brought in his real world experience
Mhm.
from FPL engineering to the classroom. And I think that was what the kids really enjoyed. Some of the kids there didn't need to take that AP Physics because they were going to go into business or other degrees, but because they had heard that his class was such a good class, they still took the AP Physics even though they didn't need to.
Well, that's the ultimate compliment. When kids take a class they don't need to take because they've heard the teacher is so good. So there you have it. Lena, you know, we have talked, and we all know this, how close Columbus graduates are. I did talk about this with Fred Panzer. When you work together for decade upon decade upon decade with the same people, you know, you literally, overused term, becomes family like, no doubt about it. And you see, you know, kids are born, they grow up, they come to Columbus, they get married, they have kids. It's all the cycles of life. And we both know that loss is one of those cycles. And, you know, it was a very, very tough time for you 2 years ago. It was a tough time for the Columbus community. We lost Fred Foyo, and you lost Rudy, you know, within a very brief period of time. And talk, if you will, about how not just your friends, but your students rallied around you, and the value of your faith during that period.
Yeah. Honestly, obviously, the most difficult time in my life. And um, I remember coming back to school right away, and Dave is like, you don't need to come back so quick. And I go, no, you don't understand. I need to come back. Um, I need to be here. My friends and Columbus faculty, they're like my family, and the students, and they were so supportive um, of me. And they all, they always told me, I'm so sorry. I know what happened. And they were very nice, honestly. And the whole Columbus community was amazing, and they really helped me get through this. And then of course my faith, like you wonder, um why do these things have to happen like this? And it's not for us to figure out, but I've always had a very strong faith, and that has kept me going. And you have to move on. You can't just sit back and feel sorry or wonder why it happened, because we all are gonna end up in the same way. And we're here. We have a purpose, and we just have to trust God and what His plan is, whatever it is.
Yeah, you can't ask why, right? Because you're never going to get an answer.
No, and you told me that.
Yeah.
You told me that. Don't bother. Don't try to ask why, because you're not going to get an answer.
Yeah.
And you were somebody that also helped me a lot too, because you've been through so much yourself.
Yeah, and you were there for me too, and that's what we do, and that's one of the things I treasure about Columbus. We're together in the good times and the bad times, and I know people that work together are close, but I just believe in my heart that people at Columbus are especially close, uh,
Yeah.
and it is our culture, it is our leadership. We have great principle. We've had great principles. We got a great president, great administration. And, it all starts, of course, with the Marist brothers. And, although their presence isn't what it used to be, they still have that presence at Columbus. And so I'm going to ask you, what, and it's a term that gets thrown around all the time, all the time, all the time. What does it mean to be Marist? Okay, that's one of those things. It's almost a cliche, but what does it mean to you after all the 35 years? Marist, what's that mean, Alina?
Well, it really started back at Pace, when I met the brothers, and I was just in awe, because I go, these men have dedicated their lives to teaching. This is amazing, and they're so caring and so simple, and I love that about the brothers. And coming back to Columbus and being with them and being even more brothers, um, I I realized that being Marist is dedicating yourself to the students, to teaching them, and really trying to be as loving as you can to all of them, that letting them know that you care, um, that you can be like a mom to them, that you're there for them. Love of work. um, I don't work that long because I'm part-time now, but I would stay after school there, and whoever needed help, I was always there. um, I'm always there. I always told them, come during lunch, before school, after school. I'm always there to help, and just being there for them, and knowing that you care, that you want them to do well, and if there's anything you can do, you're there for them. And just simplicity and love of work and patience with the kids. A lot of patience.
One thing all of us that have been there a long time have noticed, it's an all boys school, and traditionally it was like an all male faculty. That has evolved, and it just seems as American society changes too, having a maternal influence at Columbus is very, very valuable to even more and more kids these days. And I think that's sometimes an underrated or overlooked aspect of what women bring to Columbus.
Yeah, for sure. And parents, especially moms, work. Sometimes moms work very long hours.
Yeah.
They sometimes are the professionals that are busy, and they get home and they don't have time for the kids. And we're there every day, and you see them. Well, now with block scheduling, sometimes we're in class for an hour and a half or longer, um, every week. So you get to really help and be, some like a mom, if they, if they need somebody to talk to, or just help, in any way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
so
very important. You've never been one to seek the spotlight. How did you feel when you were named to the Columbus Hall of Fame, which is a great honor, and there aren't many women in the Columbus Hall of Fame? How'd that make you feel?
Oh my God, I was so humbled, and honored. Um, I don't ever, me, I don't do anything for, to get a recognition. It's just not me.
Mm.
Um, so, but it was really, really humbling, because um, I've done a lot of work at Columbus, and a lot of things that would go unnoticed, and it doesn't matter, because I didn't do it for that. I just did it because they needed to get done. And it was like, hey, you did all this stuff. Somebody noticed. It's okay.
Actually, yeah, the right people did notice, and I was very happy for you. Listen, 35 years. It doesn't seem like it. And just on behalf of everybody at Columbus, the kids that went to school there, your peers, the administration, everyone, I want to take this moment to thank you for being such a class act at Columbus High School, and stay as long as you want, Alina. You know,
Thanks,
you
John.
bring so much to the table.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm taking it one year at a time, and
Yeah,
we'll see.
we'll see. Good answer.
I'll be here next year, though.
Okay. And Lena, I know you didn't really want to do this because this is not your thing, but it was fun, wasn't it?
It really was. Um, I enjoyed it, and it was definitely fun. I know you tried to get me to do this some time ago, and I said no, I don't want to do this. And then you asked me again, and I said okay, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, and I thank you for that because it's not in your comfort zone, but it was a lot of fun. So Explore Nation, I hope you enjoyed a conversation with one of the great teachers, period, in the history of Columbus High School, Miss Alina Sanchez. So, Alina, again, thank you very much. And Explore Nation, until next time, this definitely has been Buenos Tiempos. And as always, Adelante. Thanks, Lena.
Thanks, John.